Kia ora koutou, ko Jade Sokoingawa, ko Tangatitiri Aho. My name is Jade Tang-Taylor and I'm the Innovation Director here at Academy EX. Let's start today with a karakia and then we'll jump into what's happening today. Me karakia tātou. Ko te kaua o runga, ko te kaua o raro, ko te kaua ora, ko te kaua ora. E rongo e whakairihia ki runga, turuturu e whiti whakamaua ki a tīna, tīna, hui e, tāki e. Ora. And just we really want to acknowledge all of you for making the time to be here, our wonderful panel speakers, wonderful guests as well, and little guests, and also wonderful attendees. There's always wonderful questions that come up throughout these panel discussions, so don't feel you need to hold back at all. We've got some wonderful experience and expertise to share with you today as well. Also just want to acknowledge where we're zooming in from, Tamaki Makaurau, where mana whenua here is, or where we have a special partnership with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei. And if you want to also in the chat, kind of connect in and zoom in. If you haven't popped your name, your location, who the mana whenua are in your specific location, but also what you look forward to learning today, feel free to pop that in there too. But what is happening today? We'll open with a karakia. There's a bit of intro. I will play a short video actually to be able to set the tone for today in terms of what the future of healthcare holds. We'll then introduce our wonderful panel speakers, Sylvia, Ben, and Emily, who I'll share a bit more about. And then we'll jump into the questions. So why the intersection of health tech and innovation is important, what are the current challenges, but also the big opportunities around this space, and what are the possibilities of better futures using health tech and innovation. We'll wrap up with some Q&A. We'll do a little bit of a plug with some upcoming learning opportunities that we have at Academy EX. And then just wanted to say, wrap with them with a bit of acknowledgements and thank yous, and then close with a karakia by 6:30. In terms of how the Zoom session is going to work, I know that I see lots of wonderful familiar faces in the Zoom room. But for those of you that are new, this Zoom will be recorded and then sent out tomorrow, Jana, or over the next few days, along with the slide deck and upcoming learning opportunities. We will be using Otter AI to capture notes in the background. And we usually take the Otter AI to then create a recap insights blog with you all after the session as well. That's probably going to come out in a couple of weeks. While other people are speaking and panelists are speaking, please keep yourself on mute, but there will be opportunities to ask questions at the end, or feel free to use the chat function to ask questions, comments, send little, emojis and reactions. I'm a big fan of that as well throughout. And we always love to see your smiling faces. So if you feel comfortable and it's safe to, you're not driving or anything like that, feel free to turn your video on. But if there's no other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'll play this quick little video that sets the tone, and then I'll introduce our wonderful panel speakers to you. Hopefully the sound works.
In the decades ahead, healthcare will undergo dramatic transformations. Medicine will become more precise. Value will shape care delivery. Patients will become empowered consumers. And digitalization will transform every facet of healthcare. Patients will have a digital twin, a customized computational model of themselves, enabling Dr. Clive to anticipate illness, guide therapy options, and predict outcomes of procedures. Expanding precision medicine will enable radiologists to make highly specific diagnoses for Stephen without unwarranted variations. AI-powered decision models, fed by vast population health data, will improve diagnostic accuracy. Healthcare will become anticipatory, organized around Paula's medical conditions, and available around the clock, transforming care delivery. Multidisciplinary, highly productive care teams structured around patients and their needs will collaboratively deliver the full cycle of care. All interactions with John will become convenient, personalized, and compassionate, improving patient experience. Supported by real-time monitoring and guidance, John will become more empowered and have physical and virtual access to care when and where he needs it. At Siemens Healthineers, we are enabling healthcare providers to increase value, shaping the future of healthcare.
Yeah, that was a beautiful little video. I heard the Chief Strategy Officer of Siemens speak at a World Economic Forum on the future of healthcare talk recently, and then I found that video, so I thought it would be very fitting to share with us today. Anyway, so introducing our speakers, our esteemed panelists. First of all, we have the wonderful Sylvia. We're going to move backwards because we're all about changing things up today. Sylvia is a wonderful Masters of Tech Futures advisor at Tech Futures Lab. She has been here for quite a while with us, which is wonderful, one of the OGs, originals, and also a founder of Power x2. She's an amazing clinician, researcher, educator, advisor, and also a dear colleague of mine. So thank you, Sylvia, for being here. We then have Ben, which I actually knew Ben from quite a while ago with the design space, co-design space, participatory design, and working for social good, social impact, social innovation. But Ben is currently in the key team around emerging technologies and innovation at Te Whatu Ora, which he'll share a little bit more about amazing mahi that he's doing there. And then last but not least, our dear friend and ex-colleague, Emily Preston, who is innovation lead at Ember Innovations, which is all about connecting up the wider ecosystem around mental health, entrepreneurs, and well-being, which she'll share a little bit more about with us too. But first of all, I'm going to hand it over to Sylvia to share.
Very exciting. Thank you. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Rune te monga, ko Fulda te awa, ko Kati te iwi, ko Sylvia toku ingoa. Ngā mihi nui, kia koutou. Kia ora everyone, really lovely to meet you. I'm Sylvia. I'm born and raised in the beautiful Rhone regions in Germany, near Frankfurt. From a family of 4 girls with the most amazing mum, and I now live in Mamaganui with my partner, who is originally from Rotorua, and our teenager. My background, and if you want to advance the slide, that will be amazing. Thank you, Jade or Jaina. And it makes a little bit more sense if I talk to that. My background is in research with training in psychology, neuroscience, and health science. And I completed that training both in New Zealand and in Germany. And that really forms the evidence base to everything I do. And one focus in recent years in that part of my work has been in tech and healthcare. And here I've looked at real, I guess, fundamental concepts within health tech research, methodological issues like usability assessment, how is that measured? And we've uncovered a pretty astounding lack of theoretical frameworks that guide that kind of assessment, which calls into question a lot of the validity, I guess, of health tech assessment and evaluation that we do. I also looked at questions like what methodologies can we utilize to ensure cultural responsiveness in this space to combat what we call in psychology the weird bias in science, and that stands, it's an acronym standing for Western educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic kind of methodologies. So how can we combat that? Some questions that I ask myself every day in my research work. And the other aspect, I guess, of research that I've looked at more closely is applications of health tech in everyday clinician and client's life. So that's that old debate between effectiveness and efficacy. So here I've been involved in projects looking at individualized virtual reality for training self-compassion in young adults with low mood, in mobile applications that allow young people rangatahi to track their own mood. And we've looked at feasibility projects. So for example, the feasibility of conducting stress management and intervention including something like progressive muscle relaxation via telehealth. Apart from that, what I love also sharing my passion for research as a research supervisor, learning facilitator, and contributing to curriculum design. So you can see that in that yellow corner there of my life. And the focus here really has been on contributing to really good science, improving on some of the problems, I guess, that I've noticed, particularly with regard to methodological aspects in the health tech literature. And really fostering critical thinking. I think that's a real critical key at the moment, in particular in the health tech space, both for students in psychology, health science education, but also in applied research, such as that what is happening at Academy X, where I'm one of the advisors, as Jade just introduced me. And then finally, the last part of my life is I'm a clinician, and I'm the founder of Power Times 2. That's a healthcare practice with the focus on intersection between brain and body health. And here I work every day empowering clients in injury rehabilitation, injury prevention kind of space, for example. And that looks and feels a little bit different from usual healthcare, in that there's no siloing of, I guess, what we're trying to think of different aspects of physical and mental health. There's an emphasis on relationships, on sustainability, on taking time and not rushing appointments and quick fixes. And here I, of course, also utilize technology to support where applicable. So that might be telehealth to reach clients not in my area, or utilizing wearables and applications, mobile applications, some of which I'm sure we'll touch on today. So importantly, each area of my work, though, directly informs and strengthens the other. And relevant to our discussion today, I've looked in depth at some of the problems in the space of health tech research and practice, but also the opportunities, really, and that the use of responsibly designed health tech with a solid theoretical base can offer us. And have seen more and more people coming into that space. So increasing diversity, and I think that's a real key. So I'm really genuinely excited today about the pathway ahead and about being here to engage in a really stimulating conversation with everyone present. Thank you. And I hand it over to Ben.
Cool. Ngā mihi kia koe there, Sylvia. Excellent. So kia ora koutou. He Pākehā reanga tuatahi ahau. No Ingarangi, no Kotimana o Kutupuna, ko te whanganui e tāra taku tūranga waiwai, ka tuku mihi o ki Matairangi, te maunga, ko Waikanae te awa, ko Briggs toku whānau, ko Ben ahau, he taonga rongonui, te aroha ki te tangata. So I'm, so my name's Ben Briggs. I'm a principal advisor, in that up in the corner there, that emerging tech and innovation team. I am, so just saying first generation Kiwi myself, English and a bit of Scottish in the heritage there. Grew up in Tamaki Makaurau, but and did a bit of time down in Otatahi, but been up here in Wellington for a good 20 plus years now. I was just offering mihi to Mount Vic, which is where we're fortunate enough to be talking to you from at the moment, overlooking the harbour. And yes, so Jade says, I had the pleasure of working with her previously in various design roles. I've been 10 years in government across a range of different agencies doing stuff, anything from community-led up to a national level in the design space. Could say service design, I'd like to say co-designer, but I've yet to see us actually do co-design properly in government. Although hopefully I'll get to talking about that. Or I will get to talking about that as part of the intro here. And so I've been in the in Te Whatuora working with my amazing team for the last 2 years now. If you just go to the next slide, please, Jade. We won't spend long on this one. But this will sort of bring up looking at, so here we are, nice sort of big typical government diagrams, nice big strategic kind of things. This is what the health kind of sector looks like, talking about, the intersections of where we're sort of doing our sort of work, research, innovation. There's a lovely thing there about all the different objectives. We could probably spend the next 15 minutes talking about this, but that's really not going to be so exciting. So we'll kick on to the next slide. But basically, health system, big, complex beast. I mean, I thought I've worked in some pretty, what I thought were large and complex organizations before, but I've got to say health is very much, like to me, it's sort of been next level and on steroids. And if we think about Te Whatu Ora, for example, in itself, we've had 20 different district health boards coming together. I think the organization as a whole is about 80,000 people now, but also what that means is that you can also have 20 different systems, 20 different ways of doing things, as we're very much starting to find out with some of the, the projects that we're kicking on. So if you could just go to the next slide, please. So yeah, this is in terms of with our little team of 10. So like, yeah, how do we like to work? Really what we're all about is looking at bringing people together, people who have a problem to solve, and looking at that area in terms of where technology can help. And what I really liked about when I joined the team is that I think working with my boss, John Harries, tends to see things like technology. And although we sit in the data and digital space, it's not just about building websites and apps, which is really refreshing. Like, technology could be that we're talking about, AI, we could be talking about genomics, you could be talking about, pharma. So, we tend to like to take the broad view on what, on what technology actually sort of means in that health space. For those of you who are the design background might recognize the double diamond. We've actually been developing our own one with our Māori colleagues around that in a more te ao framework, but unfortunately I just didn't have enough time to be able to drop that in there. So for another time, maybe. Cool, so if you'd just like to jump on to the next slide, please. So to give you an example of those types of health tech things that we're working on, which I know a few people have already put in the comments here. So this is, we've got our team down the bottom. You can see we've got a, we've got a mix of, we've got some of our data scientists and engineers there. So where we talk about our equity partners, that's our Māori colleagues that are sort of very much looking, making sure that we have the te ao and the Māori lens around the equity in terms of what we're driving. So, looking at a few of the things we'll get up here. So working on stuff like, ML, AI platforms here, around doing things around machine learning, and we like to try and do as much as we can in the open as well around that. I've been working around stuff like student placement systems. I'm looking at trying to improve sort of efficiencies on how we could be doing that within the health sector there. Colleague Eileen's also been looking at things like 3D printing in terms of sort of getting some national views on that and opportunities in that space, and the use of drones as well. Which they can always sort of get kind of fun, and particularly some of those initial workshops were sort of pretty fun. We sort of start brainstorming what these things could be doing. Radiology text analysis, so looking at things like how we can use natural language processing tools. Tātai, if those who may have already seen that, so and that was certainly something that got a lot of airtime, and I think for good reason during COVID around the use of Māori data and Māori data sovereignty. So this is the tool and effective website that's going to be around collecting that affiliation data for Māori so that they can be helping achieve those better outcomes by helping iwi and the health system better understand, where Māori are, where those problems are. The remote patient monitoring, so talking about a co-design approach. So yeah, we've got 4 of our team there. Currently, actually, they're up there in Taitokoro, and they're about as far north as you can get just before you get to the Cape, working with the communities up there, taking very much a co-design whānau first approach on that, and we're looking at trialing some different devices that will support the whānau to be able to manage the health ones themselves, and we're working with both the community providers and the whānau there to actually design that community plan of care in terms of what's happening, and they're also doing that out in Tairāwhiti and out on the Chathams as well too, which I had a lot of fun about not getting to be part of going out to that work there. We've got our innovation funnel, which we are looking at testing the establishment of, getting national tech innovation, which I'm sure will probably be of interest to some of you here in terms of people talking about the projects. So trying to improve how we can get things through. We ran a bit of a survey just across the sector to get a sense of what's happening. There's about 200 odd initiatives that we're aware of. We need to be thinking about, again, how can we make sure people have what they need and how they're connected. And again, of course, it's like as we come together as one health system, it's trying to understand who's doing that. For example, Amber Innovations, who we've had some wonderful chats with your previous colleague, Camby and Berry there, Emily. Risk modeling, maternity is fine around looking at being able to share information for midwives, making it a lot easier around that. And also we've been part of that thinking about that consent in the social license space well, about actually ensuring that people are aware of who their data is being shared with and giving them control over it. We've got a tutility-driven equity by design framework, so we're trying to help the programs, all the basic piece of work happening inside data and digital, the big ones about what it actually means when you apply tutility to your work, and it's not just a tick box exercise on the beginning of a business case or a couple of project documents. And yeah, the last project we got on there is the one that's very much been taking up a lot of my time, which is around trialing point of care device, a particular point of care device. And it's interesting you had Siemens Healthineers there, Jade, because that's who we're working with for this particular one. So in emergency departments, about a third of people that turn up present with chest pain, and then normally to draw blood, one of the tests they do on it's troponin. If it goes through the internal labs process, busy emergency department, that could be an hour to 4 hours before maybe that might get through and the clinicians are able to assess it. This particular device will produce a result within 8 to 10 minutes. We've actually had this live in Canterbury for the last 3 months, and we've seen significant impacts down there. But what we're particularly excited with this as our team is that standing up something like this at a national level with the middleware in the cloud, and then what that then opens up for other point of care devices that we can then get, I think, particularly out to the community settings. And, you know, if we think about, say, for example, Tairāwhiti, where you've literally had areas cut off, and, you know, if we could get devices into them, save someone a 3-hour drive into Gisborne for a hospital, yeah, sort of check out with these things. So these are the kind of spaces that we're playing in, and I'm hoping that I didn't overgo like 10 minutes on that. I will hand over to Emily. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. O ka tupuna no Ingarangi, no ko te rana no Naiteria. Ko tangata Tiriti aho, ko Emily Preston toko ingoa. I'm the innovation lead at Ember Innovations, and today I'm in my home in Tamaki Makaurau in Ōwairaka, which is our Ngāi Taiki Tamaki land. Really my pleasure to be here with you all today. And if we can move on to the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about Ember Innovations, which is actually born out of Ember Korowai Takitini, which is a large mental health service organization, all sorts of different services they provide. And the, I guess our genesis, our whakapapa story is that there was a recognition that although these services are very powerful, there's actually a need for a more fundamental shift in the mental health system so that it can actually serve the people well. And that's what my small but mighty team is tasked with. So on the premise of these numbers, which is that basically it's really hard to get robust data in mental health. So I can't promise you these numbers are right, but the underlying theme is right. So every year we have about 1,250,000 people across Aotearoa who need mental wellbeing support, who kind of reach out for support. And our main source of support is clinical services, you know, talk therapy, those sorts of things. And public health services and registered counsellors make up such a small proportion of that number. So there's a bunch of people who are left without support, given that that kind of support pathway is the one that most people try to walk down. So we're trying to bridge that gap. We're trying to figure out how we can actually reduce the levels of mental distress and also meet people's needs better. And we're doing that through supporting innovation, basically. If you can go to the next slide, Jade, I'm going to talk to this very briefly because it's very ugly and way too much detail. Oh, there we go. So this is our very ugly theory of change, very much a work in progress. I'm a big believer in theories of change as being a learning instrument. So the intention is basically that we want to create an enabling ecosystem for innovation. And we have a really broad definition of innovation. So although some of that is tech, some of it is not. Some of it's very old knowledge. It's about bringing things that we have known and forgotten that are not part of our kind of status quo way of dealing with mental well-being back into the fore, giving people more access and more choice around the sort of support that they receive. And that's whether they're already in distress or whether they're just starting to kind of struggle a little bit, or whether they're actually quite well and they just want to stay well. And there's a bunch of different ways that we do that. It's really about 3 things, which are on the next slide, Jade. I'm jumping through that one very quickly before we can get too much bogged into the detail. It basically comes down to these 4 different activities. So we work around connecting people. We're a very small team and we have a very small kind of niche role that we're trying to play, and we're not looking to duplicate effort or reinvent things that exist. We're trying to connect up the different parts of the ecosystem that are already doing really good work so that we can kind of help that to flow better and for innovators to get better support. So we connect people. My lovely colleague Cambrian, who Ben referenced, is an incredible connector. If there's anyone in Aotearoa he doesn't know, he knows their friend. So that's really helpful. We advocate. So there are kind of some key messages that we're trying to get out into the world to kind of reframe how we think about mental health and well-being around, moving away from this kind of clinical medical model, which is prevalent, to recognizing that there are other ways and there are other things, and moving away from some quite stigmatizing mindsets and language that exist to things which are more kind of supportive, things around more peer support in the workforce, those sorts of big messages, but also around providing a platform for innovators to share what they need to thrive as well, because we're about supporting innovators who have the potential to create significant change, not just innovation for the sake of it. So it's really important that we are kind of affying them through that process too. We also provide direct support to innovators. So that could look like helping them understand where they fit in the system. It could look like helping them build some capabilities around building a business model or understanding their impact, or all sorts of different things. But we provide direct support. And actually a lot of that is quite mental health and well-being specific. So looking at things like how you can do co-design in a way that feels safe when you're working with people with lived experience of distress. When you're working with tangata whaiora, really important that their voices are heard and they're centered, but lots of people are really scared of doing that because they feel like there's a real danger of doing harm. So how can we support people to kind of be a little bit brave and do that in a way that feels safe for everybody involved? We also have a focus on challenge-led innovation, which is super important because we have this incredibly nebulous world of mental well-being that actually, if you ask 4 different people for a definition of, they'll give you a different definition. So we need something that's specific that we can mobilize people around. And challenge-led innovation is really about finding that focus and bringing people on that journey with us. So at the moment, we're doing a challenge based in North Auckland, so the region from the bridge all the way up to kind of Wellsford area. And we've been working with rangatahi and young people across those communities. I used to call it this community, but there's a lot of distinct communities within that space, so that they can shape what our focus is. So what's already working, so we're not going in assuming there's nothing and bringing in all sorts of things. What isn't maybe working, or what they prefer to work differently, or what might be missing, and then shaping that and bringing innovators in to work with them. And they've also been selecting the people we work with, supporting them throughout, and we're just about to get to our kind of final celebration event, which shows the progress they've made over the last 20 weeks, and that will be held at Orewa College with a bunch of community people there as well to explore what that next step looks like. So that's another part of what we're doing. So yeah, that's kind of who we are. We are about innovation in its broadest way, so long as it's about mental health and well-being and has a real focus on how we can effectively do that to serve the people of Aotearoa and beyond, I guess. And that's probably enough for me.
Amazing. Thank you, Em and Ben, and also Sylvia. Em, if you want to do a little plug, feel free to pop the link in the chat as well around welcoming people to this showcase if you're wanting to do a bit of a shout out. But lots of wonderful patterns and themes that I heard across there. I really love this quote that was on Ben's slide around bringing people together who have a problem to solve where technology could help as well. And it seems in terms of a theme across that it is very people first, kind of human-centered, tech-enabled, but also innovation infused in some way, shape or form. So thank you. Let's jump straight into the questions. First one, which is, why is the intersection of health tech and innovation important to you? And I know, Sylvia, you had a slightly different intersection of yours with around healthcare, teaching and learning and research. But why were you drawn to this work in the first place? What inspired you to become a clinician? Let's start with you, Sylvia.
Thanks. Yeah, good question. I think always for me it's clinician first. I think I'm really passionate about providing excellence in care for my clients or users really of technology. And technology really plays two roles there. Firstly, in enabling, I guess, people to benefit from usual care if they can't, I guess, usually access that care for whatever reason that might be. So they might be disadvantaged financially, or they might be residing in remote areas. So, you know, all the work that I've just heard that Emily and Ben are doing is just amazing. And I'm really passionate about that. Or people who don't access usual care because of stigma, very prominent in around mental health, and Em just touched on that too. And also for people who have, I guess, had negative past experience that aren't prepared to engage with healthcare providers. I think technology really allows us there to bridge that gap. And I think the second way in which, I guess, in my clinical work, technology is really useful, and why it's important to me, is in supplementing my care with objective data. So if I'm working with a client who's struggling with long COVID, them being able to track their own blood oxygenation throughout the day, to look at their step count as they're progressing through exercise prescription, to look at their mood in a more objective way, and for us to utilize that and triangulate the data is really powerful in kind of increasing the client's sense of ownership as well and control. And that's something that's often, actually, and we all know that severely, either personally or working as a clinician, that sense of control is often severely reduced as a result of navigating a health concern. I think technology's got a real player there, got a real role there.
Amazing. Thank you, Sylvia. Ben, maybe we'll jump to you next. I mean, we won't always have to go in this order. We can jump around as well. Just to give Emily a bit of a break.
Yeah. I don't know. Have I already answered this question in my little preamble? Not so little preamble. Yeah, in terms of what sort of drew me to the work, I think, I mean, when I just sort of, I guess, even started learning about whatever, you know, it's the user experience, you know, customer experience, all these kind of things were way back when, and this was back in banking days, you know, and in terms of trying to find something that kind of aligned with my values, is that ultimately when you realize that you're working for a company, that it was all this work that you were doing apparently for the good of the customers, ultimately about driving profits, that didn't sort of sit so well with me. And then, yeah, when I found out this stuff was happening in the public sector, that was why I sort of I'd make a bit of a switch, and 10 years later, here I am, and still going. But I think, I mean, yeah, I think you've sort of already touched on it, Jade, in terms of picking up on the quote, you know, with it, as it's like what that technology can do. Sylvia, I think when you're saying, like, you know, the access is a really, you know, big thing. It's about how we can use that stuff around inequity, you know, in terms of being able to level up the care, like, you know, particularly looking at either new ways that we could be delivering things, or again, is there ways that, you know, technology can be used that can take the pressure off, you know, off staff, and sort of, you know, sort of freeing up clinicians or nurses, or, you know, whoever it might be, to be able to actually be doing the work that, you know, they want to be doing, and actually sort of working with the people as well. Is always, interesting in this space. And I think ultimately, to me, it's about being able to help people, like, you know, finding the best ways that we can do that, in a very responsible way, you know, particularly when you work in the public sector, in terms of who we're working for and whose money it is that we're actually spending as well. I think, you know, is a big thing that certainly comes, to me with it. I think is integrity is a big thing that's as part of it. But I'm gonna stop there.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ben.
Can I
yes.
just add, sorry, Jade, can I just add from a research perspective, I totally like to, being provided a really nice segue there. That's for me why I feel really excited and passionate about working in that health tech research space, because I feel really strongly about research that's applied and of benefit to communities, exactly what you just said. But I feel in the health tech space, we really need to up our game, I feel. There's a lot of kind of wild west of mobile apps happening out there, commercialization on the back of people's health fears and insecurities. And I think we've got to do better in that space and not rely on methods, where we're
Yeah. I think
it's
it's a really good point about doing it in a safe way. And again, when you talk about that research space, I mean, often, you'll hear talk across government about evidence-based policy, and again, I think that, taking these approaches actually gives you a really good way of building evidence, taking out risk and more importantly, actually working with the people that you're trying to help in the first place, because invariably about 99% of the time, they're going to be the ones who know what the solutions are. And in fact, they might already have them there and they just haven't had someone to help them realize it.
Did you just put yourself on mute there, Ben, intentionally? Yeah, Ian, what about you? I mean, working with people, and we always say this, or we used to always say this around innovation, and, people know, or communities and people know their challenges best and they know the solutions as well. And you were talking about co-designing with people of lived experience in tangata whaikaha. But before we jump into that, like why were you drawn to this work? I know that you've had a varied and illustrious kind of career around the innovation space. So yeah.
I will take varied. Illustrious is that's a big word. I think this space speaks to my personality. I call myself a skeptical optimist. We have to believe in better and change, and the world can be a fairer, better place for us all to actually work in this space. And I believe that very strongly. And the mental health space is very close to me, having seen and experienced, loved ones struggling and, having lost loved ones, and, which many of us have, right? It's everywhere, distress. And I think, recognizing that that's really important to me, having this whole beautiful world of innovation, which to me used to mean just like shiny things. And then I came into the social innovation world and realized it's way better and more geeky than that. It's about having a robust process for proving and improving and knowing that you're actually changing something. And I love that. Being able to do that with the people who know best, not having to be an expert, not even wanting to be an expert, and building something better with a whole host of people with incredible skills and expertise, and hopefully making the world a better place through it. That is, I mean, why wouldn't you be drawn to this work? I think that's an incredible privilege. So yeah, that.
Kia ora. Thank you for sharing. Did you want to touch on the I guess co-designing with people as well? And I guess you touched on it around having diverse perspectives and not being the expert in the room, but actually facilitating those kind of conversations and solutions to emerge from and with the community.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've always been really aware of the limitations of my knowledge and experience, and being a migrant to this community and not having grown up here, that feels even more important to me, that I kind of can decenter myself and my perspective and hear from people who know better and shape something with them. So yeah, that's a really important part of it for me, having different sorts of expertise and building something together, I think is where the magic happens.
Ian, thank you. And yes, Ben's right in the chat. We highly encourage people to pop their comments, thoughts in the chat. And I think you'd like for people to give them some direction around what you'd like to get from us in terms of topics of conversation. So really, we do have time for questions at the end, but let's jump into the next question and then we maybe jump into some of the questions in the chat. So it feels like this world is rapidly changing at an exponential rate. And I know we've got our quarterly briefing on Friday, which talks about the latest and sometimes greatest around the business technology disruption space. And lots of great opportunities, but also some challenges as well. And I'd really love to hear from what you're seeing in the spaces that you're working in, whether it be in mental health, whether it be in research and healthcare, whether it be at a systems level space too. So I don't know, Em, do you want to go? So I can see you on the screen. So would you like to go first?
Well, you're
Especially
shaking up the order, Jade.
I know, I'm changing it up. It's one of those days.
Keep it fresh. Okay, challenges and opportunities. So to me, there are huge opportunities and equal challenges. It's kind of the flip side of each other, hey? So when I think about tech and innovation, I think about the ability to increase access, remove barriers, and at all the levels. So if we're thinking about kind of geographical or cost barriers, there are brilliant ways to improve access to mental wellbeing solutions through technology. We're working with Overcome at the moment, and they provide, I don't know if you know them, they're incredible, but they provide access to exposure therapy for phobias through virtual reality. And if you have a smartphone at a really surprisingly low price point, you can get access to therapy that in person you'd be on long wait lists for while your life was really adversely affected. And that's quite a simple application of a technology, which is incredible. There's also great opportunities around sort of understanding the lived experience of some of these really human experiences that we struggle to understand and to talk about. So as I said before, mental health and well-being is a really nebulous space, and we're not great at talking about it. So we quite often have our own experience and don't realize that there's commonalities between our experiences, and we struggle to connect with people. And I think tech gives us access to data to help us understand it. There's a really cool, there's actually quite a bunch of really cool solutions around like visualizing pain, which can be really helpful for people living with chronic pain, just to be able to actually see it as a thing, something that's kind of a little bit tangible, can have a really incredible impact on people's mental well-being, because they're so often kind of led to believe that it's sort of not real. So that there's really simple things like that. And I think technology has a great ability to connect people, but on the flip side, it can also have an ability to isolate us. So things like, I'm in two minds about the whole mental health metaverse, which has loads of people really excited. And there's lots of examples of people kind of being able to engage in this kind of other dimension. But equally, is there a danger that you're kind of stuck in that space then? So I don't know. And obviously all the kind of ethics questions around how you support people who are in distress are exacerbated when you add on top the ethics questions around AI and all these sorts of technologies as well. So huge opportunities and lots of things that we need to figure out, I guess.
Yeah, being true to your skeptical optimist persona, which I love. And did you say that it was Overcome, the VR experience?
Yeah, Overcome.
Oh, yeah, cool.
VR, come. Yeah,
cool.
Incredible.
We'll pop that in the chat as well. Sylvia, I'm going to come to you. Just changing orders left, right, and centre.
Keeping us on our toes.
Yeah,
cognitive flexibility. I really kind of see four big challenges in the space, and with of course of that is the opportunity, and one picks up on how you started this conversation, and that is just that immense pace that we're struggling with in a way as scientists, I guess, and clinicians, and the lack of a really close working relationship between scientists, developers, and clinicians. I think that's crucial, and it's only done in very few places really well. And unfortunately, and that relates to my Wild West comment, there's a lack of transparency on commercialization, which then leads to inscrutable algorithms, that underlie a lot of the solutions that are out there. And I think that brings a whole host of ethical challenges with it. So that's kind of the first big problem I see. The second is around diversity and repetition of biases, particularly say in the natural language processing kind of background or area of mental health interventions. So lack of linguistic diversity that actually goes into those algorithms, limited reproducibility, population bias, there's a whole host of problems there. And the third is methodological challenges in the literature. So I alluded earlier to that usability assessment often being done really badly, and there not being much in terms of theoretical frameworks guiding that. And another one is artificial intelligence, where often there's actually very limited data pre-processing that's being done, or data preparation, and that then leads down the track to inaccuracies or imbalances in that training data set and in the algorithms themselves. And I think that's really dangerous. And the last challenge, I guess, is really that I think that all of that's compounded by healthcare worker stress. So we heard about that earlier, and increasing workloads. And that then either leads to either of those situations are dangerous, complete disengagement with technology because you're just overworked and you can't possibly be that critical consumer that you need to be ultimately, or blind trust in technology, which is also not great. So that's kind of the four main challenges that I see at the moment in that space from my perspective.
But also challenges, but potential opportunities, maybe?
Of course, yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering if it might be a good time to address Tanya's comment there around the Sylvia, we talked about cowboys in the tech health space, because I'm happy to pick up on that too. But yeah, be good to throw it back to you just to respond to that, and then I'll go.
Yeah. So I think in that app space in particular, there's a lot of things out there that doesn't really comply with the current evidence status and guidelines of treatment. And there's not much regulatory processes in and around what comes out, what people are offered in that space. So that means a lot of things that are commercialized aren't really evidence-based medicine in a way. And that's dangerous in my eyes. We need to get better there in that regulatory space. Did you want to elaborate on that, Ben? Do you have some experience yourself?
Do you want to elaborate and then we can jump to Gavin? Because I know Gavin's got a lot of experience in this space too.
Go for it.
Ben, you're on mute.
Sorry.
That's it. No, you're on mute again.
Yeah, my bad. There's some, we've got some good questions in there as well too. I'll look forward to coming to those on it. Yeah, I mean, I think I'd talk with that in terms of, I think around, that's certainly one of the challenges. I think I would say what I've seen with some of the private, and I wouldn't even say private-public partnerships and market dominance can be a bit of a, I think, sort of challenge that we can see at the moment with that, but also not wanting to lose sight of the good work that people might be doing in that space. Yeah, I mean, just reiterating what I was saying about the fact that it's a very large and complex beast, say we've just officially had our, at least sort of in areas, like, we now know what our new organizational structure, for want of a better word, is going to start looking like there. But, you're talking about a significant culture shift in terms of potentially getting people to be thinking about things in a different way, at a national level. I think will be some of the challenges. I would say the opportunities on the flip side of that is that there actually potentially are already people who have been, doing that, and that this is the opportunity for us to be able to come together and do that. If you look at what the outcomes of the health reforms are trying to achieve, again, if we do that well, I think this will be an amazing thing for Aotearoa, but it's that doing it well bit. And again, I think when you look at these challenges, is that often you can always sort of reframe that there's the opportunities there, like, that with data is a big thing. And again, like, I've got my colleagues who it's very much there. You're talking to probably the least technically experienced person here, like, in an emerging tech and innovation team. I very much have to lean on a lot of my colleagues for this, but I know with what they're doing, we know that there's a lot of amazing data in the health space that we could be utilizing. But again, there's stuff around like quality of data, data control. Yeah, very much interested to talk about, you know, sort of what Tanya was asking. It's been asking there as well around like how people can have access to it as well. And again, like, are we doing that in a, you know, in a safe way? I mean, there's the header program that's looking at trying to make it more available for developers and things like this. But again, I would say the challenges are, and if there's anyone here who's looking at this or doing this as part of their projects and stuff, please don't come to us with another thing standing up there. Here's my wonderful, great, bright, shiny thing that works on its own in isolation of everything else. Like, you know, think about how it can be integrating or how it fits into the bigger system. Because again, like even where we've seen some, you know, wonderful new technologies, or we get people will approach us about a new thing and it's like, so how's this going to run? Oh, cool. We've got to run another server software on a local server, or like, so it's got its own middleware that runs with that. So that's now a 35th thing that we've now got admin staff having to log in and manage while they're like, you know, it's like, you know, try and think about how the work actually fits in as part of the bigger system. Yeah. And how it will help achieve outcomes. But what I should have asked at the beginning is like, how much time have you got on this? Because yeah, I could talk about it. So let's move on to the next question, shall we?
Gavin has a really wonderful question in the chat, and maybe would you like to just ask it, Gavin?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know where in the world you are at the moment, but
currently sitting. I just had to think for a minute. They're Kuala Lumpur, about to
Great.
relocate to Thailand and then Vietnam after that. But no, it was, Sylvia's previous comments, I think really important around the community has no regulatory body, no regulatory function over how these designed. As part of my project, I've just reviewed over 100 applications that have been designed in the last 10 years, specifically for hepatitis C. 2 of them had what I would consider, and that's a personal consideration, had genuine clinical background behind the logic and reasoning of how they were formed and how they were made. The second part of that is really reinforcing what Ben just said, and this extends back to when I was working with Te Whatu Ora as a contractor. Everything is highly monetized out there. You know, the end game of releasing a product into the health market for 99% of entities is making money. 1% are actually thinking about the communities, and that might sound harsh, but I think that you could really substantiate that. Systemized approach, people are too busy trying to look at how they can maximize the money. So with their siloed systemized approach, they're absolutely capitalizing on that. Once you engage, you need them more and more. The biggest stumbling block that we had with the product ideas that I had with my contract time in Te Whatu Ora were rolling back into age-old discussions around data management, sovereign data management, credential management. You know, the tech and the IT side were actually really simple. Yes, they were really advanced cutting edge technologies, but in the face of it, that wasn't what the stumbling blocks were. It was just the age-old discussions around our traditional issues that we've had. And I really felt that Te Whatu Ora were making a lot of really good headway with that, and I hope that they continue on that pathway. And like Ben said, a big part of that pathway was making sure that any products that were coming in were compliant across the board, that they could be multi-purpose, that our APIs could become a commonality as opposed to having to be a specialized product. Middleware hopefully becoming a thing of the past as we get a lot more compliant as well. So it's an interesting space. And one thing I'm really learning from Masters is that we're so quick to overcook everything and concentrate on talking robots, pretty artificial pictures, and lots of lovely, shiny things. In my own project, I was just discussing with Kriv, my advisor, my biggest problems in my research at the moment are around data management, Māori data sovereignty, and they're actually extrapolated out into a global context as the significant problems and barriers that I have. Anyway, sorry, a bit of a rant. Thank you.
I should have a feeling we might have had a chat when you were still in Te Whatu Ora around what you were doing on Hep C, I think. Was that right? When we were talking about the point of care stuff.
Base. Yeah, cool. Very briefly.
Nice to see you again.
Likewise. I'm still on the same pathway.
Nice.
When I left, a few of the consultants suggested I take it up privately and keep pushing it. So
cool. Let's catch up.
My biggest hurdle now is funding, because a lot of funders are saying that I'm not a commercially money-making concept. So I'm having to rethink things a little bit. People don't like community space out there.
Thank you so much for sharing, Gavin. I always really love your insightful discussions, and I don't know, you call them a rant, but I find them really insightful. So thank you. Let's jump to the last questions, and then we'll jump back to the questions from wonderful Tanya in the chat as well. But yeah, what are some possibilities? I know that you talked about actually an integrated, rather than something shiny new, some sort of shiny new innovation in isolation, something that is well integrated into the bigger system is really key. But what are there some other possibilities, or actually is the big possibility and opportunity here around data management and Māori data sovereignty from an Aotearoa New Zealand context? But yeah, and obviously Ben, you already talked about what you're working on specifically, but yeah, what? Maybe we'll jump to Em first, because it feels like Em hasn't said anything for a while. But what do you think are the possibilities? What are you seeing around your amazing challenge-led, mission-led intervention at this moment in time? Opportunities here.
I'm actually seeing some great examples of digital approaches which do have that systems lens, which is really exciting and makes me think that there's a lot of opportunities for actually building a more joined up kind of customer pathways, or whatever you want to call that. So I'm thinking of things like Saha. I don't know if you guys know Saha. It's really cool. It's like it uses data from like wearables and smartphones and looks at the patterns of how they're used and can understand your mental well-being through that. And their whole approach is that it can plug into other apps, so you can be more responsive to what's going on. So there's things like that going on, which I think are really exciting. And I guess the big possibilities that I see are around potential for, as I said before, better understanding of the human experience through generating more data and having more ability to understand what's going on with people, and you know, understand this kind of nebulous world of well-being or distress a little bit better, and increasingly more access and choice around being able to do the things and access the solutions that work for people. And in my most optimistic brain as well, I like to think there's an opportunity for tech to help us move beyond some of the medical bias, which gets in the way of people accessing good support when they do have a history of mental distress, or they are actually in distress, because that whole world of not getting medical care because you have a label or something in your record is a really real and confronting situation. So if we can move beyond too much of the human bias, obviously there's bias in everything at the moment, and the data is biased, but if we can start to move beyond that sort of level of bias, then that's quite an exciting possibility to me as well. And I was just going to add on the comment earlier about cowboys and the wild west of apps, which I keep hearing about, and we're doing some work around that as well. There is a bit of work going on. I think it's Te Whatu Ora, Health Navigator, and eMIC, maybe, are developing an assessment framework for e-mental health tools. And I don't know, it's an early stage, but the concept of it seems quite interesting. So I'm watching that with some interest and hoping that will be something which helps to kind of mitigate some of that risk as well.
Kia thanks for sharing, Em. We heard the founder of Saha speak at Sunrise recently. Really, really insightful, really inspiring venture that he's embarking on. So, and really love what you're talking about, how one of the possibilities around moving beyond medical bias. And as a clinician, Sylvia, do you think that that is possible? And what other better futures can you share with us today?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Em, for that. I will definitely check out Saha. I hadn't heard of that. And just to add, I guess, for healthcare consumers out there who are interested in the mental health space and applications that are available, there is that, I think it's Te Puna Waiora Healthify website that does go through a bit of an evaluation framework of apps and checks for the evidence base. So definitely encourage people to check that out if they're interested in those solutions. I think Em and I are very much on the same level, actually, which is really exciting to hear. So I'm really excited by the idea, and I think that's something that's cut across our conversation actually tonight, of cheaper sensors and devices that integrate data from that, so wearables and phones, and then algorithms that integrate that data, allowing for what I would consider more preventative medicine through, say, machine learning. So, for example, you could imagine a context where personalized treatment suggestion of cognitive behavioral therapy for someone who's identified just at risk of major depressive disorder, and then suggesting CBT as a good candidate approach based on location data, interaction data on social, health data that's collated on the device, etc. All of that, I think, is a really exciting possibility of a better future out there. And I think also then that really feeds into what Em also touched on, really bringing into focus more the power of lifestyle medicine, rather than being a band-aid or the band-aid of antidepressant or the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. We're moving into space, both in terms of scientific discourse, but also public awareness of how, I guess, you can shape your health and take part of that, and rather than be a consumer, a healthcare consumer. I hate that term. So I think that's a real positive move that possibly technology can move us towards.
Love that. Thank you, Sylvia. One can only hope. If you can dream it, it's possible, right? In some way, shape, or form. Depends on time, budget, and everything else. Ben, what about you? I know that you shared a lot of the amazing mahi that your team of 10 are working on, but anything that you want to highlight, or any other possible future that you'd like to share with us today?
I kind of feel like I've covered it. Like, yeah, I just don't want to risk repeating myself, and give the opportunities to get into sort of some of the questions and see what others might like to hear about, and if anybody has anything they might want to share as well too. So, yep, happy to jump into that. Yep.
So yeah, if anyone has any parts eye, any questions, feel free to pop in the chat, or again, feel free to pop your hand up, raise your hand if you'd like to do that. But
I'd just like to say total admiration for Ben and his team managing to hang in there and navigate through the organizational change space, and still being there with the looming political changes that might be jumping in. So absolutely fantastic. And that's one area of Te Whatu Ora that I've been really impressed with, the people that are driving it in the direction they want to take things. Very pragmatic, very open, and really good, robust discussions. I'd love to see a lot of the other management teams around them adopt the same mindset. I think, have a real impact on the organisation.
Cool. Thanks, Kevin. Well, I'm just wondering, because we've got some of the questions. So Tanya, I'm hoping that you feel like we addressed your one around the Cowboys. Bern had, which is a nice little segue from Gavin's one. They're asking about whether our thoughts on whether or how the recent elections might affect the health/tech/
Ben's one. Bern. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bern's one. Yeah, around innovation environment. I don't know. It's kind of. I mean, I'd have to say my immediate thought goes to the colleagues that we're working with in Te Ako Whaiora and the Māori Health Authority. Would be my. I have to say my biggest concern, and particularly from a Manaaki point of view. Having spoken to a few of them, they're don't know. They seem to be a little bit like, well, we'll just wait and see what would happen until something's announced. That's announced, and probably invariably what would happen is that we'll just end up with, they'll probably all just get folded back into Te Whatu Ora, and we'll have some kind of Māori Health Directorate in there. I mean, I don't know. That would be gives hope it would be something like that, because to undo the work of the last couple of years in terms of standing that up just seems completely. So again, this is speaking in my personal capacity, not representing Te Whatu Ora, but would be completely idiotic, or would be one way of putting it. How strongly, and what kind of language can we use here?
Right, I'm not recording the question, so you can use strong language if you like.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, look, it's always going to be. I think the thing is, we sort of had the challenge of the amalgamating, like becoming one. And look, and I appreciate I'm purely talking from the public sector, not even talking about sort of working alongside with our sort of colleagues outside of that, but just coming together as one Te Whatu Ora, like that's a huge transformational journey that was already underway before we've now had a change of government, which, I mean, the normal challenges that you get with that, which would be, you know, if you had a change in priorities, obviously if you end up with, depending on who ends up forming the coalition and some of the things they were saying, if we suddenly end up with axing half a whole lot of the numbers in here, then that's going to make things just that little bit harder to, you know, to get things done. But yeah, when you're working in the innovation space, I mean, dealing with ambiguity and, you know, change being a constant, it's not a common thing, but ideally you would like them to be setting up a culture that's going to support those kind of things. Sylvia and Em, what are your thoughts?
Oof, what are my thoughts? I think innovation is one of those interesting things that people love to throw around as a word. I mean, we've got a mental health innovation fund potentially, but whether that actually, like what that means is really hard to decode, because often that can just mean we'll give some money to a couple of things that we actually know are working, but look sort of innovative, which would not be my definition. But, you know, so I think I will remain optimistic but skeptical, as is my usual way. I do think there's a really interesting thing in mental health, but I think in health generally, around the difference between actually addressing a need and the upstream stuff versus just doing something at the bottom of the cliff. And in mental health, and I think in all health, from my limited experience, the kind of social determinants piece is so important. And to me, no matter how much focus there is on innovation around a perceived need or problem, if those social determinants are not addressed, if inequity grows, if poverty increases, family harm, etc., if those things are not addressed, doesn't really matter how much innovating you're doing at the bottom end, it's probably not going to meet that need. So yeah, I remain interested and curious to see what happens next.
Yeah, optimistic and skeptical at the same time. Sylvia, any thoughts from you? And then Tanya, I know you've popped a few questions in here. Feel free to unmute yourself and elaborate on some of these if you don't feel like they've been answered. But
yeah, absolutely.
I
encourage people to pop other questions up. I didn't really have any specific reflections on the impact of the election per se on what's happening. I think it's really hard to say always where tech is taking us and you know, which direction it will develop in. I mean, if you think about it, just, you know, 2 decades ago, jobs didn't exist that exist today, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You know, I wasn't imagining two decades ago to be having a conversation with you lovely people and people across the globe joining us today. So I think for me, I guess I'm more of a long range vision kind of person, and I think about what's important long term, regardless of little blips and what happens, what's the newest buzzword. I think for me, it's always that critical consumership that's really, really important, and where everyone can play a part in really investigating, interrogating further, what am I giving my data away for here? Where is that going? Is that actually, you know, what am I trusting here? Is there good evidence base behind it? Rather than jumping on the next new shiny thing, would be my advice. And that's kind of my ethos of how I see, I guess, technology and innovation in that space.
Kia ora, thanks, Sylvia. Catherine had a question around the mental health or e-mental health tools. Are you aware of any other frameworks for women's health? And then we'll jump to Tanya's. We'll jump to some learning opportunities, and then we'll jump back to Tanya's questions, because I think that's a really good one to end on. Em, do you know any other frameworks specifically around women's health?
I don't. I know there's all sorts of different frameworks for assessing whether you can access kind of like government contracts and things. So maybe there's some things there, but I'm specifically focused on the mental health one, and that's the only one I've seen there as well.
We'll keep looking, Catherine. I'm sure we can. find something at the end, maybe connect with our other friends, the Gender Project. Anyway, so ngā mihi, thank you, thank you, thank you. I am just going to share a few of our wonderful learning opportunities, and then we'll end off with Tanya's question as well. But as mentioned, maybe at the beginning, we've got our Business and Technology Disruptive Briefing, our fourth quarter. This is a quarterly briefing by Frances Valentine, our CEO and founder, this Friday morning at 9 to 10:30. We've got our inaugural Converge Research Symposium that's happening on Friday, November the 24th of November, which is all day. We've got research workshops in the morning, research presentations in the afternoon, and research posters in the evening. And it'll be great and a great time of connecting, reflecting, and learning as well. And then we've got our final deep dive of the year, a learning lunch on Wednesday, the 6th of December, 1 to 2, and I'll be sharing a bit about the intersection of design thinking, systems thinking, and futures thinking. So if you're keen, definitely Jane will follow up some links, some upcoming learning programs as well. So hopefully I shared this at the beginning, but we've got 3 faculties at Academy X, the Mind Lab, which is all around educational futures, Tech Futures Lab, technological futures, and Earth Futures Lab, which is more around sustainable futures. But a whole range of postgraduates, microcreds, and advances and samplers as well. But I'm going to hand this over to Megs if you're still on the call to share a bit about programs.
Kia ora. Thank you, Jade. Well, kia ora, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us this evening from around Auckland, from around New Zealand, and San Francisco. So thank you for listening to our wonderful speakers. So much good stuff to take away. As Jade said, I'm Megs. I sit as one of 2 outreach managers across our 3 faculties, across our business. And my job is just to listen to people about where they want to take their futures, how to future-proof themselves. A lot of it ties into the future of work and in their roles, what they want to look like in 2 or 5 years, and the knowledge, the confidence, the leadership skills that they're seeking. People want to be and present themselves and put themselves forward in the world as credible and lead their teams and have the insight, the knowledge, experience to communicate that to board, to stakeholders, a range of different people that they're engaging with daily. And so my job is really to help with that. So if there's anyone in your circles or yourselves, or you'd like to know more about any of our programs, that's me. I look after our Master of Technological Futures alongside the program team. Thank you, Jade.
Kia ora. Thanks, Megs. And if there's no other partai, maybe we'll end off with the one by Tanya. And Tanya, it's always lovely to hear from you. Feel free to unmute and ask it. Otherwise, I can just read off the chat. What would you like to do? Do you want to put you
Keep going, Jade. Keep going.
Keep going. Okay. Wonderful question to end on. Are there any new healthcare delivery models that we see globally that are performing better than us, tech, human-led access, that we are working to model, or otherwise the vision of what is the vision for public sector health? I think that's a big, broad one. Ben, I'm going to throw it to you first, given that's where you are.
But the vision for it, I guess, here would be the delivery of the what we're going through at the moment, in terms of what's brought together the Te Whatu Ora, like the health reforms on that. I mean, again, because there's what the wider health reforms wanting to do. I could really only talk in the face of our team, and I mean that one about looking at what's happening overseas is always an interesting one, because I was having a look at a few things around that, around sort of consent and social license, which also, I think, Tanya, I know you might have asked around the, when do people sort of start getting access to their own health record, and to me, that's what I was, interested in with something like the My Health account, which a very good way. COVID became a very good way of getting a quick uptake. How do you suddenly get 4 million people to do an uptake on a knowing what an NHI is and how to load results, into a health record? Well, COVID all of a sudden suddenly, created sort of kicked off what was the My Health account, and I think you want to be looking at, what are the opportunities that something like that actually now provides for us on there. But the thing I found, and it was talking to a few of the larger providers at the time that, that were looking at something like talking about dynamic consent models, and they were wanting to develop a global one. And I actually I could never get my head around that concept. I didn't actually see how that was possible, because I think you've always got stuff that's unique in each country, culturally, globally. I think you've got some governments who will mandate and might take a much, shall we say, dimmer view on how they use people's, data and those kind of things, and often not the best. So I think, to me, where I really see those opportunities is actually understanding about more, how do we do it as a really good treaty partner? Like, what does it mean for us to look at this through as a TL, and through that TL lens, and how do we actually, demonstrate our responsibilities to the treaty? And then I think a lot of the principles that underpin that actually enables you to then be doing the same for a lot of the, the other communities that we need to be helping and lifting up so that we do have that equitable access of care. So I hope that answered the question. If it didn't, feel free to call me out otherwise.
Could have been very well articulated. Sylvia, what about you? Any thoughts around healthcare delivery models that you're seeing globally that is doing it slightly better than Aotearoa?
I don't know. I think I'm part of Ben, and I don't think it's necessarily a new healthcare delivery model that we need. I think for me, it's always, as a clinician, it's about what works for the individual and their whānau, and their very personal, individual decisions that are being made all along the way together. So it's really that collaborative piece, goal setting that is very individualized and personalized, and then utilizing technology to support that. That for me is always worked best, and I believe for my clients too. And that can be very, very ancient healthcare delivery model. And in fact, that's probably what it is, actually, rather than going with, any new names or anything like that. So I think for me, it's very much personalized care. That's the best approach, which is very hard to do, of course, in the public sector, but not impossible, I would argue.
Hilda, thanks, Sylvia. And Em, final words of wisdom from you.
Oh, pressure. Yeah, I would tautoko that as well. I think it's not that there's specific models that I see working that we should be looking to kind of incorporate here, but I do see that there are plenty of places where there's more appetite for and more comfort with doing things differently. So if you look at kind of psychedelics in America, or kind of crisis cafes around the world, these are not things which are actually that innovative, really. They're very well supported. They have great evidence. They're not something we can't do here, but for some reason it does seem that it's hard to have the chance to try some of these here. So I think let's not look to other health models, but some of those sort of enabling factors which allow us to do things differently. So that kind of enabling ecosystem stuff would be great to learn from, with homegrown ideas. And many of them probably old.
Thanks, Em. Coincidentally, I was speaking to someone from Stanford D School earlier today who taught or lectures around psychedelic medicinal design. So we're trying to get her to maybe share a little bit at our symposium, but should definitely connect you up if and when she gets to Aotearoa as well. But yeah, so what Ben also shared, looking in the chat, looking at models or Pacifica Health models, what is the knowledge we can draw in our own communities as well. I think that's really, really important and beautiful one to end on. Oh, do we have time for this one? Oh, I don't know. Okay, yeah, maybe just final word from each of you is, would you recommend people, where would they go to learn about more around health tech and innovation? Where do you go to learn more about mental health and tech and innovation, Em? All right, feel free to pop it in the chat.
I just did your micro credential on emerging disruptive tech. So
Go
there you
there.
go. And that's super helpful.
Thanks for the plug in. Any other thoughts? And we can crowdsource this. Is there, I mean, Gavin, you would know lots of things in this area. Where do you go to learn about the latest and greatest in health tech and innovation?
It really depends where you're looking and what aspect of innovations that you're looking at. There's a lot of variation. So for me, my focus is predominantly community-based. So I'm very fortunate with hepatitis C. There's probably 3 or 4 ports of call that I need to go to get complete global updates on what's happening there. But on the tech side, there's so much information out there that you drown in it once you jump in. And it really is, for me, I'm still learning to identify what are the keywords I'm using when I do my searches. What are the organizations that I'm going to approach that are actually in my interest to be speaking to. Like I said earlier, I'm finding that most of the organizations I approach for information will sell me their own children in order to make a dollar on the budget line. And I've got 2 kids, so I'm quite content already. So no, it's not an easy space out there. You really got to identify exactly what it is you're looking for, and then that really helps with that search.
I see Sylvia nodding her head. Yes.
I agree. Thanks, Kevin. I think firstly, it's really amazing to see people interested in learning more. I think curiosity is the main thing, really important factor, people wanting to learn and find out stuff. And Academy X and the whānau there are amazing resource, individual cohorts, but across cohorts as well, and wonderful advisors. That's one reason why I love working there, because I learn so much from my colleagues. I hope they're learning a little bit from me too. But I think just start reading. Google Scholar is an amazing resource. There's so much free available stuff out there. Blogs and podcasts. Someone put Andrew Huberman. Yeah, I like him. There's other ones. Bruce Bussey is a good one in that health tech space. Free podcasts. And then just keep learning and engaging with people. I think it's fantastic.
Amazing. Thanks, Sylvia. Can you pop Bruce's podcast in the chat as well? That would be amazing. And Ben, where do you go to learn about all these amazing things?
Honestly, mine's just my team. I've got some people around me who have just got a huge amount of wealth of experience in this space. And I think, as Sylvia said, it's why what draws us all to the team that we're in is that we are continually learning. And I've got some amazing researchers that particularly a colleague that I've been working alongside him, we talk about side questing a lot in our team. We're very good at doing that. We just sort of go down rabbit holes, and just some of the stuff that these guys come up with. And I feel like being relatively new into the health space too, I'm continually learning. Like the current project I'm on has been a massive stretch for me in a really good way. So I think just that actually being close to and being alongside the work. And again, if you're lucky. I mean, some of these clinicians and the nurses that we're working alongside are doing amazing things. They're the ones who are wanting to, sort of look and improve things, bringing new ways of working into it. So honestly, I find I get enough out of it. I really don't have the capacity to do too much outside of that.
That's beautiful.
I think the only podcast I would offer, which isn't in a health tech space, but I'm a big fan of 99% Invisible. I find that's great for all things. Again, what can seem like the most mundane things are just really fascinating. So that's my plug for a podcast.
Yeah, very big fan of Roman. Is it Roman Mars? He's got such a soothing voice as well. Very good for the mental health and well-being.
Yeah, he has the best radio voice. Yep.
Amazing. Kia ora, thank you. So maybe we'll try and pop that chat or follow up in the email as well. But just wanted to say thank you to our wonderful speakers, Sylvia, Ben, and Em, for sharing your wonderful wealth of experience and expertise with us today. Thank you to Megs and Jaina in the background, who's busily making all the amazing tech work as well, and to all you amazing attendees for dedicating 90 minutes of your Wednesday evening with us. I think it's sunny outside still. Hopefully you still get to get some sun. But just really love the quote right at the beginning around bringing people together who have a problem to solve where technology could help, but also I'm hearing across the board how do we people first, tech enabled, but not a shiny new thing that's innovative, but something that's actually integrated as opposed to working in isolation as well. So thank you. Let us close with a karakia today. Me karakia tata. Whakaria te tapu kia waitea ai te ara kia turiki whakataha ai, kia turiki whakataha ai, haumie huie, tai kie.
Tai kie. Ngā mihi kia
Ora.
koutou.
Ngā mihi, ka kite, pomarie.
Nō hora mai.